Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known as the Egg Whisperer. Fertility expert Dr. Amy Alonza.
And you have yet another success story
Just launched by an East Bay fertility doctor.
We'll get to it. Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show. I'm so excited to have Brittany Hawkins, co-founder and CEO of ELANZA Wellness. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us as we talk about how to find the best fertility coach.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So let me just tell people about you. You and your co-founder, Catherine Hendy, started a company focused on fertility coaching. And you're the co-author of the book, and I'm honored that you asked me to help contribute. Everyone, you guys, if you're thinking about freezing your eggs, please consider getting it. It's titled Everything Egg Freezing. Oh, there you go. Cool. I love the cover. Everything Egg Freezing, the essential step-by-step guide to doing it right. It came out in 2019, and it's a very valuable one-stop science-based guide for women considering the treatment. And you also froze your own eggs, and I can't wait to hear about your experience doing that. And then after you met Catherine, you decided to set out and make fertility treatment simpler, clearer, and more empowering for women in their shoes. And I'm excited to talk about fertility coaching with you and about what you guys are doing around that. But before we do, can you just tell us about your own experience with egg freezing and what you learned as an egg freezing patient?
Yeah, I started looking into egg freezing around age 33. I, like many people, was just really overwhelmed by the headlines in the news about plummeting fertility and what my family could look like if I was able to have one. All these really scary and confusing questions that I feel like many people my age are grappling with right now. So I took the plunge and got an appointment with a fertility doctor. It was actually in that appointment that I found out that I have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome. It affects about 1 out of 10 women, and just a simple antral follicle count conducted by the doctor found this out. But I actually couldn't believe this is something I've been really struggling with for 33 years and had no support in finding. So yeah, actually it took me about a year to really go through the motions, decide what mattered to me, and follow through with egg freezing. Had some issues with the injections, may have nearly botched my treatment, also had some over hyperstimulation, which is something that's often more of an issue with people with PCOS. So I had a little bit of a rough go of it. But yeah, I am in the end really glad I did it.
Yeah. And then how did you meet Catherine? How did you guys forge this relationship that you decided to co-author a book and co-found Alonza?
You actually wouldn't believe it, but we met on a reality TV show about what it's like to be on safari. It was conducted by National Geographic, and it was essentially a free safari. And we ended up sitting next to each other for about 4 days without showering. And, you learn a lot about someone just sitting in the same car and pointing out fictitious animals. So yeah, sort of not your typical co-founder meeting story, but yeah, it was great.
Oh, that's fun. And then how did you guys start it? What did you guys do?
Well, yeah, I would say that, we and many of our friends were just going through this sort of time when everyone was trying to figure out what was what when it came to reproductive health and fertility. And she had also had some relationships shifts in her life and went through the treatment process herself. And to be honest, a lot of our drive comes from frustration and just knowing that there has to be a better solution. And a lot of the time there isn't someone else that's going to do it. We have to do it ourselves. So that's really where we began the journey and writing the book.
Yeah. And then what do you feel is missing from some of the conversations between patients and doctors, and what's missing from those conversations about fertility treatment currently, and how do you guys bridge that gap?
It's a really good question, and one that I think I'd never really seen so clearly from my conversation with my fertility doctor. It's not that my fertility doctor was doing a bad job. It's just that often, a doctor is trained in the clinical aspects of care. And often with fertility treatment, especially something like egg freezing, there's so many larger questions, like how do I feel about family? What does my relationship look like now? I mean, even that with like, do I freeze eggs versus embryos? I mean, there's so many considerations that doctors are kind of put into a position where they have to be counselors. And honestly, that's what patients or people just need. They need some of that more personalized thinking and counseling as to what matters to them and if this is right for them. But often those conversations are not in the purview of the doctor. And that's where a coach can step in. A coach is really there to help you make sense of all the other variables in your life, whether it's you just found out your AMH from a modern fertility test and you don't know what that means to you, or maybe you're trying to kind of go through the financials of whether or not you can afford fertility treatment. A lot of these things take reprioritization of your life and your relationships and your own understanding of what family means. And that's where a coach can really provide that structure and that framework that is completely complementary to your clinical care.
I love how you said that, complementary. You're not challenging the physician,
No.
You're not replacing the physician. I mean, I see my patients more than probably like 90% of doctors in this country. I have patients that come to me from all over and they say things like, I only had a phone call that lasted 5 minutes with my doctor twice throughout my entire relationship with that fertility clinic. And that is normal now. And that's really hard because, like you said, how you don't have a relationship with someone where you can talk to them about your priorities and you don't even know what questions to ask if no one's telling you what you should know, right? I mean, so that's why I feel like, bringing you on right now is really important to me because there's, I think, a shortage of fertility doctors out there. There are a lot of patients and people need people, just like you said. We don't need to integrate with technology. We need people to help us decide what we should be doing when it comes to family. So how does coaching work with Alonza?
So at Alonza, we are really, really believers in the idea of coaching people, not problems. So this term coaching has kind of grown and morphed into a variety of different things as of late. But I think one framework to think about coaching is in comparison to mental health. So if you go see a therapist or a psychologist, their job is to look back into your life, to look into your childhood, your family, your upbringing, and understanding more about that in order to make sense of where you are in that moment. They're also there to help with clinical depression and anxiety. Those are really important moments when having a therapist is crucial. On the other hand, a coach and an Alonza coach is on the emotional health side. That means managing your stress, reframing and building resilience in who you are in this moment, and also looking forward. Where do you want to go? What are your goals? And then also being your coach, literally, like, how do you win your own life? How do you create that path that works best for you and you only? And then how do you get there? And that's where a coach really steps in. And at Alonza, we only use board certified health and well-being coaches. That means that they have gone through the highest level of certification and they have hundreds of hours of experience. But beyond that, we also do a lot of ongoing specialized training, things like trans fertility and holding place for pregnancy loss, like a lot of those really specialized aspects of fertility that are super important for people to just know that whatever, their background, their sexuality, their gender, there is a place for them at Alonza. And we are, completely, to use technical terms, HIPAA compliant. Everything is just, trust is crucial for us, and providing that safe place to then provide that emotional health support and meeting people wherever they're at, wherever they are in that journey, and giving them the tools to actually really move forward.
And then you're not just dealing with people who are freezing eggs. It's through all types of fertility treatment, right?
Exactly. I could tell you a million stories about how much we're able to transform the experience for people in a variety of different fertility journeys. We often find that people really gain a lot of benefit in the exploration phase. Like, is this right for me? Am I ready to go through another round? Do I want another baby? There's a lot of questions in just that initial kind of just mapping things out in your brain, but then really making sure you have your coach in place during fertility treatment, whatever type, if it's IVF, IUI, a lot of those moments can be really scary. And there's a lot of vulnerability in those moments and a lot of emotions that are high, so having this safe place to really express those has been really beneficial. And then also carrying out, we see people throughout their entire reproductive lifespan. So not just after the retrieval. I mean, of course, you want the best outcome, but sometimes it means you have to go through another round. And so having the strength and the confidence to continue and to feel like you have this support team to help you really kind of manage whatever comes, we see a massive amount of benefit. And just, like I said before, inclusivity is really important for us, whether you're a same-sex couple going through surrogacy or you're an intended parent. Intended parents benefit massively from having a coach. And then on the other side, also gestational carriers. There's so many people in every phase of this journey that are grappling with a variety of different emotions. And that's really where I go back to coaching people, not problems.
Well, and so let's just give you a scenario right now. I'm 46 years old. I'm thinking about having a baby. I just don't know where to start, but I really think I want to coach. What happens next when I, let's say, go to your website?
So you would book what we call a starter pack, and there's usually a cumulative effect for multiple sessions. So in your first session, you're going to have a 45-minute conversation with a coach, and you're going to be matched with a coach. And in that conversation, it's a lot about just unearthing where you are in your journey, what your goals are, getting to know the person on the other side of the video chat. And then from there, you map out your plan. And a lot of people have what we call generative we call them magical moments, where they're sort of really, I can only describe them as a series of light bulb moments where somebody has, they all of a sudden are able to reframe something and kind of have that ability to kind of reframe the way that they're experiencing their own journey. So then from there, you have subsequent 3 to 5 sessions, and those are 30 minutes. Your coach follows up with a sort of recap of what you discussed. And then from there, you and your coach design a specialized plan that helps you meet your needs based on your goals.
I mean, that sounds very nurturing. I imagine for a patient to have someone like that with you during the journey. You used a lot of my own buzzwords: resilience. I love magical moments. Someone brought me at their transfer chocolate that said Dr. Magic on it. So that's one of my favorite words. And then you just said another word that was like, oh my God, I love it. You're going to be like, what did I say, Amy? You said something else. I'm like, yes. Team. That's the word. Magic, team, resilience. And so I have something called Fertility Team. And I feel like somehow we have to put in a C in there somewhere. So the T for team is therapy, but I also think that it should be therapy and a fertility coach. Now, I mean, I wasn't feeling like patients really needed a coach maybe like 5 years ago, but I feel like patients need a coach now. It's almost like a fertility doula, someone who is listening there, helping you prioritize, reprioritize, pre-plan your plan before the plan. So, I mean, so important that you guys are doing this. So Brittany, I know I'm a doctor, but don't feel like you're going to insult me. Okay. So just say what you feel and think. But what do you wish doctors knew and addressed about fertility that they're just not addressing now?
It's a really good question. I think, as I touched on before, this idea that people need some of that counseling. But I think a lot of what's happening is is stress. And I know this is a really, we did a ton of research around this. You saw it from our book. We talk a lot about stress because who hasn't heard the story of, someone who went through multiple rounds of IVF and then they stopped trying, their stress went down, and then they had a baby. I think it's still impossible to say if infertility causes stress or if stress causes infertility. But at the end of the day, stress is stress, and it impacts everything about your experience, whether you're undergoing IVF or egg freezing or IUI or surrogacy. Stress is something that I think is a bit discounted by doctors. And because the role is more so clinical or completely clinical, they kind of dismiss stress. They're like, that's not something that I can help you manage. And Dr. Amy, you are a different breed. You are way more in the weeds with your patients. And that is, amazing. But most doctors aren't. They're just, come to me for the clinical, and then everything else, get out of my office. And so it's really hard for people in a place where you're feeling extremely vulnerable. You have no control, to just give people tools to feel like they're more a partner in their care, and that their stress is valid, and that whatever the data and the science says, it doesn't matter, because they're still feeling it. And I do talk to doctors about this, but it also impacts the way the clinics operate. If I'm feeling really stressed, I'm going to be calling clinic constantly because I need answers, and I'm building up in my, own narrative that I can't kind of figure out. And so I'm Googling, which is the worst thing you can do, because you read all these crazy headlines, and then you're asking friends, and they maybe have completely different experiences. So you want to be able to go to your doctor, but often they can't provide that information. And I feel like patients are feeling so kind of just left out, left behind. They're not getting the support that they need. And that's really where we found this huge gap in the clinical care paradigm.
I'm glad you brought that up. So honestly, I'm wondering, is there any feedback between the coaches and the doctors? Like, is there ever like a HIPAA, like a medical release form, where a patient will say, can you talk to my coach? And does that happen?
No, it often doesn't. Usually the doctor just says, talk to your coach. And and then we often, if the person is having more acute depression or anxiety, then we will also bring in a therapist, or we will recommend or actually coach around finding a therapist, because often there's a lot more effectiveness if the person seeks out that support themselves. But no, it's often, it's actually never been the case where there is a direct conversation between the doctor and the coach. I think for the most part, the doctor is just like, nope, my job's done here. I've done the clinical. The rest is for your coach. But I think an interesting statistic is that 30% of patients drop out of treatment specifically due to emotional distress. How doctors aren't seeing this as an important part of their clinical care. I mean, they're losing patients. Patients are going elsewhere because they're going to find doctors such as yourself that actually meet them where they're at and see them as a whole person and actually support them in their journey in totality. So I think that doctors are starting to really see that they can't do the same as they've always done.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just so you know, if you ever have a patient of mine who is working with an Alonza coach, and we ever need to have a conference call or exchange information with my patient's permission, I'm all in.
Perfect. I love that. Your first time.
And then on the other, like we talked about doctors and what they should know, but what do you think people need to know about fertility that they're just missing right now?
I think that a lot of it has to just, this term stress, I think, is sort of a weird one because it's so different for everyone. And I think that often we see maybe somebody else who objectively is potentially worse off, or, we feel almost invalid in our own journey, and we don't feel like it's okay to not feel okay. And I think that you just don't know what you don't know when you're entering into fertility treatment. I can tell you that in normal times, I feel like a very stable person. If I'm injecting myself with hormones in my abdomen, let me tell you, I am not in my normal mind. I am just not okay. And there's no one that can, you can read as much as you can read, and you can try and, your doctor can kind of try and prepare you. But until you're in that moment and you're feeling that level of stress, it's hard to know. And so really being thoughtful, whether it's a coach or not, just having a support system of people that you can trust and that will validate whatever you're going through is, I think, really important, because no one expects to need fertility treatment or want this journey, and I think it's going to be our new normal. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that stat that by 2025, most couples may need assisted reproduction, but we have to start normalizing this and realizing that it's not a journey full of rainbows and butterflies, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we want magical moments, and we want also, even when the treatment doesn't work out, to feel like they have no regrets and they were heard, and that they're not traumatized about the experience. And I really am so glad that you and Catherine met. That's a really fun story that you met on a reality TV show. And I think you guys are doing great work, and I hope that people will listen to the show. I hope that they will reach out to you guys and work with one of your coaches through treatment. And I also love that you mentioned that egg freezers, surrogates, gestational carriers can work with a coach during their journey in pregnancy. I'm going to start suggesting that as well, because not everyone has access to a psychologist from their agency that they're going to be talking to the entire time. So I think that's really important. And that, that you're LGBTQ friendly. And that's really important to me as well, because I think that having a coach when you're a trans male going through egg freezing, I think could be so helpful for so many. So thank you, Brittany, for all you do. So can you just share with us again, if someone is curious about working with an Alonza coach, what can they do? Where should they go?
It's super easy. You just go to our website, which is alonzawellness.com, and sign up for a starter package and experience it for yourself. I think coaching is one of those things that it's not, a laundry list of product attributes. You have to experience it. And I think it's going to change your life. I have no doubt in the world. And if it doesn't, then you will get a full refund.
That sounds like a pretty good guarantee. I like that. And then I'm just curious real quick, Alonza, where did that name come from?
I'm glad you asked. I love our name. We really wanted this to feel, first of all, not like a challenging, we wanted to feel more like a spa experience. It's supposed to be positive, uplifting, but the word Elan means to do something with enthusiasm and grace. And then the Z and the A are actually the acronym of South Africa, which is where both Catherine and I met on our little safari adventure. So it's sort of an amalgamation of those. And for us, it's really just about creating something that is truly positive and transformative out of something that, you maybe didn't expect would be part of your life.
I love it. That's great. I thought you were going to say the Z and the A are after Avazade. I'm just kidding.
Well, they could.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Brittany, for joining us. And thank you for all the work that you and Catherine are doing to make the experience of being a fertility patient better for everyone, everywhere.
You too. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you expanding awareness around emotional health and fertility coaching.
Thanks again, Brittany. Have a great day.
You too.